Today on the Coaching Podcast, we're joined by Jaquie Scammell. She is the CEO and founder of ServiceQ, one of the leading voices in service leadership today, known for helping organisations strengthen human connection in a world that is moving faster, becoming more automated, and asking more of its people. Her work sits at the intersection of leadership, culture, and customer experience, where she partners with senior leaders to turn service from something people perform into something people live. She is a speaker, author, coach, and she really does embed behaviours, decision-making in everyday moments that shape reputation. So, without further ado, let's get started. This season of the Coaching Podcast is brought to you by Sam. And you know, one thing I hear from so many coaches is that they love coaching, but they hate the marketing. That's why I'm excited to partner with Sam. It's an AI tool that takes the hassle out of growing your coaching business so you can spend more time doing what you love, coaching. Honestly, it's like having a marketing team in your pocket. Check it out at trysam.ai. Okay, Jaquie, I have chosen a quote from the monk who sold his Ferrari. Now, that might become a bit more clear to our audience why I chose a quote from that book in our little pre-chat. But the quote is, "The quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts," said Robin Sharma. So welcome to the show. And yeah, what are your thoughts on that quote?
I love that you chose a quote from Robin Sharma. He's been a mentor of mine for several years, actually.
Really?
Like legit mentor. I flew to Dubai and spent days with him, and then for 12 months we worked together, and he's a phenomenal human, and I quote him often. But this particular quote I actually have in the dash of my car printed out. So the fact that you've chosen, this is so not set up, by the way, like this is awesome. I love that we're vibing already. It's just like, everything starts in the mind, right? And what I've truly believed over the years of practicing meditation and also as a business owner and with the work I do in service leadership, like this is what drives the show. And the quality of your thoughts really does reflect the way you see the world and the way you show up in your words, the way you show up in your actions, the way you show up in your leadership. And I kind of feel like mastering the mind is going to be a lifelong quest for me. And I have deep respect for it, Emma. Like the mind is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I think that even now with the backdrop of AI, you know, the conversations around how do we critically think and are we becoming dumber as a society because we're relying so much on these tools, I think it's a really interesting time for us to look at how magnificent the mind is and with respect, train it, look after it, and pay a lot of attention to what it's telling you. So that's my initial reaction to that awesome quote.
Well, first of all, I'm blown away that the universe has provided that synergy already. And I guess let's go there next. There was two things you brought up I think we need to hit immediately. And that I guess the AI revolution and where does the human intuitions live within that is sort of what's coming up for me. And of course, I want to talk about self-care around the monk mode that we also spoke about off air. So where do you want to go first?
Let's maybe look at more of the practical lens first, which is the modern day world and the fact that we've got all these new shiny tools to play with, and a lot of it seems to be nested under this terminology of AI. They're so charming, aren't they? They're so attractive, these tools, and you know, because we're addicted to speed and we have so much access to knowledge and we want to get stuff done and feel like we've got a work-life balance, I think it's easy to fall into the trap of, you know, using these tools more and more, but at what cost and what's the consequence? I've literally just had a conversation with a team member outside who's got a young teenage daughter, and I think even Gen Alpha, like the newest generations, they seem to be spending less time on social media now, and they're questioning where they're spending their time, and we're seeing an uptake of younger generations on running clubs and doing more in real life experiences and wanting to connect with people and have those community connections. And so I think as charming and as attractive as AI is and the impact it has on our mind, which we can kind of circle back to in a moment, I think one of the headlines for me is, if we go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think human beings, we get very sick if we don't have that connection.
Yeah.
And I'm really wanting to protect and fight this at the moment, like fight for it, like protect those human qualities in business, in community, because we need it for our well-being, which is part of the connection to the mind. You know, I have been deeply immersed in studying the mind over the years. For your listeners, as much as I'm a business leader and I love the practical commercial side of things, I'm also a devoted meditation practitioner, and I'm on a pathway as a novitiate monk myself. And what I've learned to understand about the mind is that it's going to tell you a whole lot of stuff that just ain't true. And so a lot of us, because of the stories that our mind tells us, and sometimes we get caught up in that thought, we tend to believe that our thoughts is who we are, and we tend to believe that what the thinking mind is telling us is the truth. And what I've learned over the years, and it's really simple, right? Like, there's not a lot of woo-woo, there's not a lot of mystery to this. What I've learned is actually, when I create some space between me and my thoughts, when I become aware and I watch my thoughts, just like we watch Netflix, when I see my thoughts objectively, I've got a bit more agency and I've got a bit more influence on what I choose to listen to, what I choose to place my attention on, and what I don't. And I think this is one of the most fundamental critical skills in this modern day world right now, for leaders, for business owners, for anyone that I speak with who really wants to be a high performer and bring their best self to their work, their quest, their clients, their people. Is the first thing we unpack is, where are you placing your attention? So I think, you know, all of this is so deeply interconnected, and because part of the reason why we're not aware on where we're placing our thoughts or where we're placing our attention is because of the world that we live in, which has us addicted to so much noise and so much information that we don't have space, Emma, to even slow down and see, where am I? And I think that's a big part of it, you know, like, how do we find some space to even just for a few minutes, just check in and go, where's my head right now? And we talked about it when we just connected before, you know, like the self-critic, the awareness of,
Yep.
What's the story I'm telling myself today? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you said is so on point right now. And I think that we need tools to be able to slow down, the power of the pause. We need not just tools, it's almost lived behaviors. But I think sometimes the tool is the catalyst for the behavior to really make a behavioral change. And you know, I mentioned earlier, I just love your take on, you know, that the AI bot is telling us how good our thoughts are, even when they're not. They're the biggest cheerleader in a world where I feel like we're losing touch with our human intuition of in service, knowing when to say what, or knowing when to pause in the service industry if someone's has a problem. And if we don't pause and if we don't use our intuition and even common sense, and not just throw everything into AI for the, you know, for the magic answer, I think we're becoming too reliant on it. So anyway, there's a question in there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something around tapping into our human intuition
Yeah.
to live
Yeah.
alongside AI. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think, you know, some of what you've already mentioned is part of the tools. And I think a big part of our tools is the environment, like the way we set up our day and the way we set up our calendars, our rhythms, our like how we're choosing to move through the day. So, you know, in real life experiences is where we grow. It's like, for me, a direct experience of something is always going to trump something I read, something I listen to, something someone tells me. Like, all of that's great. And I think we fall into the trap that we cognitively understand of something as a concept, but it's not until we truly have a direct experience of it that we go, oh my God, now I get it. Oh, I felt it. I felt the pain, or I felt the joy, or I felt the progress. And so one of my first sort of words of encouragement to people is like, if you just take a look at your environment, you can easily start to sort of shift and change the way you approach each day to support you in having some more life experiences. And, you know, you've used the word intuition and wisdom, like trust that through those experiences, you are strengthening your intuition. You're strengthening your reference points of intuition. You're strengthening your wisdom, which is so much greater than knowledge. And that's what human beings we have. And I think for me, and maybe for you, Emma, and for those that are listening, like, I'm most wise and most intuitive when I first access a little bit of silence. And I just slow down, even just for a few beats, you know. And so let's look at a really practical tool here. If my environment allows me to slow down, if my environment allows me to take a walk around the block, and I'm not doing back-to-back meetings, or I haven't filled my day so much that I haven't got some pauses, like you said, in a day. And then what I do with those pauses is equally important. So I'm really, really passionate about little reset techniques that we need to do in a day, like the breath. You know, one of the breath techniques we teach busy people is take 4 seconds, and it literally is 4 seconds. But it's not about counting to 4 to take a pause. It's about taking a deep breath in the belly, like way down in the depths of the belly for a few seconds, and then the same equal breath exhaling out, so that we can access the parasympathetic nervous system, even just for a few beats. And like, if you don't come from a physical, ed background or a sports background, or you're not wired that way, this can be new news for people. This can be life-changing stuff for people. So, the power of the pause you've mentioned before is such a beautiful technique that, like anything that you want to build some muscle over, just doing it 4, 5, 10 times a day, no one even needs to know you're doing it, but it's a simple reset technique to bring you back to the present moment. And it's the micro moments in the day. It's these types of techniques and tools that, when we layer them, we actually build an environment where we actually are present. We are mindful of the thoughts we have. We have got more agency. But to your point earlier on, we can tap into some wisdom and intuition in that moment. So that's one example, yeah.
Well, take me back, Jax, to a young little Jaquie. I love the story of your dad and polishing your shoes and just the attention to detail. And what you've even just said then, I'm wondering, like, did this all come naturally to you, or are these learned skills that anyone can learn?
Yeah. So no, they didn't come naturally to me. They are absolutely nurtured skills that I've learned out of necessity. Young Jaquie, high achiever, driven, positively, optimistically, always, seeing the bright side of things and biting off way more than she can chew most of the time. Found me in a place by the time I was 30 in a really awesome general manager role down at the Aussie Open, and I had the responsibility back then of overseeing the catering contract, which was quite a big deal when you're dealing with world-class VIP players and all of the entourage, but you're equally dealing with high-flying, corporate guests, and then the masses of public that are coming through that incredible tournament. So by 30, I was taking myself way too seriously, Emma, running this contract and wanting to do a really good job of it, feeling the weight of that on my shoulders. And what had been happening over the years, because of course this was off the back of doing 3 years in the UK, opening the Wembley National Stadium and Emirates Stadium, coming off the back of a pretty intense few years, I'd found myself quite anxious to the point where I was having regular panic attacks. And there was a particular day on day 2 of the Australian Open. And for those that have any understanding of major events and particularly global major events, it's the build up to the event that's the most stressful. By the time you hit sort of day 1, you're off and running. So by day 2 of the tournament, I was probably at my peak, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And so we called first aid down, and back then it was St John's ambulance. It wasn't even like medical experts. It was the volunteer crew, lovely crew. And I was in a cool room trying to hide from the team because I didn't want them to see their fearless leader, right? Like, and this is the stuff that goes on for us, having a weak moment. But I was in a cool room having what I thought was a heart attack, and a young 18-year-old volunteer checked me out, and he said, "No, I think you're just having a panic attack." And of course, I didn't want to hear that. But at the same time, I was happy that it wasn't a heart attack. And I can look back now, in my late 40s and laugh at it. But it was the moment that made me realize I need to get a handle on this. So that was really, and I'd started doing yoga and meditation, but not fully committed. And I really believe there is a difference in being interested in something and being committed. When we're interested in something, there's always an alternative. There's always a back door. There's always you know what, just, we won't worry about it this one time, and, even if it's just 1% difference. But when we're committed to something, we're all in, and we just find a way to just make that thing happen no matter what. And that day for me was the moment where I decided I am committed to not being so future focused, which was creating anxiety and panic attacks, that I get my health and well-being back. And that really at age 30 was really when I started to go super deep on the modalities of yoga, meditation, mindfulness, and also at the same time look at the practical leadership skills that I hadn't been taught yet that I knew would help me. So it was sort of this straddling of practicality and spirituality, and a journey where I found both were equally as important for me. And so, yeah, to answer your question, I've learned a lot of skills that have supported me to where I am today, and I've still got so far to go. But I think the thing that I can categorically say is that my discipline, my self-discipline around these tools and techniques has been, I'd give myself a gold star for that. And some days you still put in the reps and you don't feel like you did a great job, or you don't feel like you gave it your best performance, but show up each day and do the reps. And health and wellbeing has been my highest value since that day. Serve myself.
Yeah. As cliche as it sounds, put your oxygen mask on first before being able to really help others. It's so important. And I love interest versus committed, because I think with service, well, let's talk about people that like do a job, right? So it's like they're interested in the job, but perhaps they're not committed. So they're not doing the 1%ers, and a lot of managers and leaders are these days, if only they were take more ownership, and I wish they would be more accountable, and I wish they would be more committed, right? But they're there just to do a job so that they can get a paycheck, so that they can live their life, quote unquote. How do you help managers and leaders in those situations when people are not all in?
It's a really great question. And I think as leaders, we need to remember, or as business owners or people that are trying to influence other people, we have to remember that as humans, we are meaning makers, and tapping into the meaning for someone is part of the job. Like, part of our job is to learn well, is it about just a paycheck and getting paid, or is there a bit more meaning to this? And what is it that I need to ask? What conversations do I need to have? What interest do I need to show in that human to unpack that a little bit? And maybe the person we're trying to influence or the person we're trying to lead, maybe they're not even clear themselves the meaning that this work might have for them. But that's the beauty of like leadership, is that we do that discovery sometimes together, and we help people see the blind spots, or we help see things in people that they can't actually see within themselves right now. And so I think it's a very healthy conversation to show your team the value they bring to the sum of all of it, to the whole success, and to not lose sight of how critically important that conversation is as a leader, to show them that your bit, whatever it is you're doing, if you're just looking after this one widget, let's break this down, how does that help this person be their best professional self? And how does this help the business grow? Or how does this help our end user? Maybe it's a stakeholder, a client, you know, someone we're coaching. How does what you do today that you might think is quite menial and just a task, let me show you the significance of that task in terms of the whole success of what we're trying to do. And that's, I want to say that's a skill to do that, but at the same time, I like to keep things really simple. It's just about deconstructing it and starting with the conversation. And I think when people can see themselves in the success of something, now we're starting to tap into the meaning that that might have for them beyond the paycheck. So the first thing I would say to people, if they have a belief, if there's leaders listening today and they have a belief that, look, Jack, people are just in it for the money, the first thing I would say is I'm going to challenge that belief, because I don't think that belief's helpful. And then the second thing I would say is go and test and validate that. Go and have the conversation with the team member about, other than the money, because let's face it, we all need, you know, we need income. There's currency for us to have worth and value and survive in the world. Other than money, what other elements of this job is a currency for you? How does this job bring value to you? And don't be afraid to hear the answers, you know, and I think that's a really great place to start, Emma. And then once you've got some more data from your people, don't forget it and use it. Keep coming back to that when you communicate the next change, when you communicate the next step up that you need, or when you communicate the vision for the week or the high value activities you want everyone to focus on for the week. You know, like, I'll give you an example. We're running an event next month, and we're doing a big team push this week to really sort of do final ticket sales. So we fill the room and really try and have a huge impact in this event. But for me, just to ask the team to sell more tickets, it's not enough. I need to speak to their hearts. So, you know, this morning we rallied around a couple of videos that are really explicit about the pain that some leaders are experiencing right now and the impact that AI is having and how our work can really help them. And it gave everyone an opportunity to see, this is the change that another ticket sale is going to create. So it's reminding everyone that our job is not just to nail the practical stuff, but we've got to tap into what I call the spiritual side of business, which is the meaning. So yeah, challenge your belief. Is it really about the money? And ask the question, and don't be afraid to hear what comes back. And then third point, use that data.
Yep. Yep. Test and validate. So feedback and coaching as it relates to high performance in the workplace, is this true across industries? I know you've worked with aviation and all sorts of industries. I'm just wondering about the connection between, you know, you're saying there, get that feedback by asking those questions, which is coaching, by the way. I think coaching sometimes has a brand issue, especially as a former high performance tennis coach. We have lots of sports coaching listeners on this podcast, as well as business leaders. To me, there is no difference. Coaching is unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance, right? So that is what coaching is. And feedback right now, so many companies, especially with the younger managers, they're struggling to give the feedback. So I guess what I'm wanting to glean from your experience is what are some of the common ways that you've seen feedback land and miss its mark, and is it the same across industries? Is kind of where my brain's going. I'm really fascinated the connection.
I feel like no matter what industry we're working with, they've all got similar challenges.
Yep.
And particularly if we're just talking about the region, like Australasian region, we've had similar conditioning, shall we say, from our environment in like what does good look like. And so you kind of get this sameness of tonality across leaders, no matter what the industry is, when it comes to things like feedback and coaching, but particularly feedback. The same barriers seem to exist for leaders that get in the way, like, oh, what if they take it personally? I don't really have time to deal with the confrontation. I don't really have the words. I don't want to upset them. I haven't got the bandwidth to, deal with the emotional fallout right now. It's just easy if I just do it myself, and then you wonder why, fast forward months, years later, you've got, people that aren't performing and they're not being held accountable. And then you've got a much bigger bushfire of an issue to deal with, right? Yeah. So again, this is a skill that I've had to really learn and nurture, is to nip it in the bud.
Yep.
And when you see it, good or bad, like deal with it. But coming back to your question before we sort of maybe get into, if you want to get into this, the mechanics of it, the part that I'm most interested in when it comes to feedback is how directly it can come back to the human elements. So yes, we're here to drive commercial business performance, whatever it is for people, performance on the court, to use a tennis coach example, performance in business. But actually, when you're giving feedback to someone, it's one of the most beautiful gifts that you can give a human being. And often it's our stuff, like finding the right words, the right vocab, having some emotional maturity, whatever it might be, that gets in the way, that just can unlock that. And then when we build muscle around it, we give people some beautiful gifts. And I'm sure you have, Emma, like I have over the decades. There's been moments of feedback that have stayed with me for a long time, good and bad, helpful and unhelpful. And it's because of the way that leader showed up and delivered it. It's the way they did it. So the only difference, I would say, context in industries and sectors. So the context is what often does put a bit of a different filter on the feedback. But more importantly, some businesses have got better systems and better routines and rituals where feedback is just what they do.
Yeah.
And then there are other companies that we work with where it's a concept, it's a wish, they'd love to do it better, but it's not embedded in their systems, their BAU, their routines. And that really is, that's worth looking at if you're listening to this and thinking, I would love to have stronger feedback culture. Look at your structure and your systems.
And can you give us one tangible example?
Yeah. So a mining and resource company that we work with, in their weekly routines, let's call it, to keep it general, like a weekly sort of like leadership meeting. One of the routines and the systems they've built into that meeting is someone's delivering the meeting and someone at the beginning is asked to observe. And at the end of that meeting, one of the things they have to do is the person that's observing has to give feedback to the leader that ran that meeting in the moment in front of everyone. So that's a really tangible example of they've built feedback into a existing weekly routine. They know they're going to have that weekly meeting every week, but they've built feedback into it and they've made it a system so that they normalize it and it becomes part of just what they do. And so you kind of get a sense that, and I've seen it firsthand, that also happens organically out of the meeting rooms. because they've built that muscle in a safe place and everyone's playing the same game. So you could use that similar example with something like, you know, if we come back to service, for example, like I'm really big on if you're going to fight for a strong service culture and you want service to be your differentiator as a coach or as a business owner, because we're all in the game of relationships, we're all in the business of service, then build a system that forces you to talk and think about service. Don't just say it, because that's just being interested. But if you're committed, build it in. So, you know, our weekly meeting here on a Monday, we have a service moment and we talk about how we're servicing our clients, and we encourage the team to share a story about that. So I want to hear a great story this week about how we have serviced. What's the quality of our service being? And I'm not interested in, did we solve their problem? I'm actually interested in, how do we make them feel? And what's the evidence of that? What was the moment that told you that we're doing what we said we were going to do in terms of how we service people? So you can see, again, just having a service moment by way of sharing a quick story. It's a beautiful way to rally the troops, get everyone to focus on what's most important, remember the human stuff. And it's just about systems. I mean, I love systems, and I think they're underrated when it comes to the soft human stuff. Like, you can build systems to support these human qualities. Yeah.
So good. What a great through line in what I'm hearing about being committed to the system, being sort of all in, and finding everyone does have a driver. You know, we're meaning making machines, and we know no other. So what is that button to find for each individual person? So now's probably a good time to ask you our holy grail question of coaching, which is, in 1 to a maximum of 3 words, what do you think makes a great coach?
Be real always.
Mm.
And I say that in the context of the year and the time we find ourselves in humanity right now. I think, God, like, the word authenticity has been bantered around so much, but I feel like it's got a whole new meaning. Like, be real. People are craving for the flaws in humanity. They're craving to go, is this someone that I can trust? Can I believe them? Is this someone, did someone write this, or is this something that was written by a machine? Like, we're second guessing everything. And I think the most effective coaching is when you're being yourself, and you're not spitting out content you've learned or a great statement from someone else, but you're bringing all of yourself to that moment, and you're letting that person also see you.
So I'm hearing that, and there's two things coming up for me. One, around this concept of, sometimes when managers and leaders and coaches show up as their authentic real selves, that's not necessarily going to be the best way that somebody else might receive feedback. Remember, you said earlier, it's the way that we show up in that moment, right?
Mm.
So, like, of all my years of being a sports coach, who I am, Coach M, the energy of Coach M remained the same, and how I then communicated with each individual was always tailored.
Mm.
So I'm curious about, it's even back to feedback for a minute. Like, there was a moment in my career where people were saying, "Oh, this is how you need to improve," and then I learned even better if. Like, how easy of a tool. I only just learned that one, like, maybe like 12 months ago. Even better if. If someone tells me even better if, I'm like, yeah, like, I got this. Whereas if you say, Emma, you need to improve in this area and this area, and you're not hitting the mark here and here and here, I already say enough of that to my own inner critic, right? So I guess I'd love your opinion on where I was going with that in relation to, yes, always be real, my authentic style, and is it important that I adapt my communication in the moment based on who's in front of me?
Yeah, it is. But people can still smell when it's performance
Yeah.
as a coach. So, like, and again, that's why I think, like, even better if as a phrase, keeping your framing when you're giving feedback or you're coaching someone, keeping it really simple and really human is one of my big tips. So the way we give feedback is what I loved, what I'd like to see less of, or what I'd like to see more of. So remember, I've got a team of facilitators, so we're constantly critiquing each other's crafts. We're constantly in a room with each other and we're giving each other feedback. And so we train ourselves to always look for some good because we are so wired to focus on the gaps and the deficits. So I want to show you what's strong and I want to keep you doubling down on that. So what I loved about that session was ... but what I'd like to see more of or what I'd like to see less of. And that's kind of our simple framework that we always go back to. And I find that even the phrasing keeps me real and it keeps my language super simple. I'm saying it to you like a 10-year-old, like you get what I mean. There's no weasel words. There's no mucky agenda. I'm okay if you don't like really hearing that. Actually, I'm just sharing this is what I'd like to see less of and more of, and give them potentially the impact or the reasons why, for the purpose of the audience or the people they were training or facilitating. So I think, yeah, for me, I know over the years, my relationship to feedback and coaching, what I've really had to work on is whether it's wanting to be liked, not wanting to offend people, wanting to be clever and to seem like I have earned the right to give you this feedback or coach you. That stuff can kind of get in the way and had made me put performance mode on.
Yep.
Let me show you. But then what I find is that the clever words and the performance mode actually doesn't cut through and get to the heart of what it is that that person needs to hear.
Mm.
I reckon there's a lot of work we need to do on ourselves when we coach and give feedback.
I agree.
Yeah. To be good at it.
Yeah. And it's funny, even with I do a lot of work for a company called Vistage, and every single person gives feedback on content delivery and relevance. And I read all the comments, and that's not easy to do as well because everyone has an opinion. It's hard to service everybody's opinion. So what do you do with one negative comment? Like, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think again, like there's always a bit of context scene setting, right? Like who's giving that one negative feedback? And quite frankly, are they like what's their worldview map that they're bringing into this to give that? Like, are they qualified to give that feedback? Don't know if that's helpful or not. Did you ask them? Is there a permission piece around that? And how helpful is it? And I think this is where it comes back to having a really good team of people around you, a good support network of colleagues like you and I am. If I wanted to bounce some feedback, I reckon you're a pretty good mirror to me. Like have you got the interest of why I'm asking this at heart here? And no agenda, so I think it's important for us to have some clean mirrors in our professional network where we're getting people reflect back the truth of what they're experiencing, and it's not jaded by a hidden agenda or something unresourceful that they haven't dealt with within themselves. So I think that's a really important piece. But if I get feedback that says I need to do better, even better if, less of, more of, and this happens for me nearly every day, where you get feedback. I think there is an element of take what's helpful if it's really creating some noise in the mind and you find yourself ruminating on it and you're stuck on it, pick up the phone and ask someone to play back to you, is this their experience as well? And that just might help you then let it go or do something different. But my learned lived experience of these things is take what you need and move on.
Yep.
Don't sit on it.
And you have, of course, 3 fabulous books: Service Mindset, or how we think about service, and then Service Habits, so the actual lived behaviors, which is where I sort of want to ask you about next, and then we'll talk about the third one, is called The Future of Service in 5D. Which I haven't read that one, and I have no idea what the title means. So I'm excited to ask you about that one, right? Which is probably why you called it that. Anyway, that was an assumption. Be mindful of your assumptions, everyone out there. Okay, Service Habits. The one I want to touch on is about make it personal, tailoring that interaction, names, preferences, preempting. We're both Melbourneites. I go down to my local coffee place. I keep going there because they know that I want a straight up latte, and they see me and already start making it, right?
Yep.
Why is that so important? And people are still terrible at remembering people's names. Like why is that? This has got to be the easiest one in the book, surely.
It really
How can we do better?
Yeah, it really is. Look, and I think depending on your context, there's lots of tricks and tips to this. But, first let's recap the why. For most of us, our name is the most unique personal label that we've ever been given. Some of us have changed our names. Some of us have got legal names that we don't like. Some of us got nicknames, but there's always a story with a name, right? And so to get people's attention quickly, use their names, but also to show them that there's an attempt of making this a little bit unique and personal for you. It's a sign of dignity and respect. And I always say to people, if you're telling yourself the story that you're not good at remembering people's names, then you're actually telling yourself the wrong story. It's actually remembering people's names is an attention issue. It's not a memory issue. So when you meet someone for the first time and they tell you their name, switch on, get present, and really pay attention in that moment. And I guarantee you'll remember their name. But if they just say, oh, yeah, g'day, my name's Jack, and they're already thinking about the next part of the conversation, they haven't really even heard you. And then 5 minutes later, they go, oh, what was that lady's name again? Well, it's no surprise because in that moment you weren't paying attention. So it is an attention issue and it's something you can build muscle around. So a couple of tips and tricks. Like I'm going to a conference next week in New Zealand. I've met the executive team, once in a boardroom, and it's several months later that I'm going to meet them in person in a conference for a couple of days. They all know me. They've only got one person to remember, but they probably also expect that I also remember them. So I have a printout of all of their faces and all of their names, and I will study that on the plane to ensure that when I arrive on site, if I pass one of them as I'm checking into my hotel, or if I see one at the coffee queue, that I go up and say, hello, Matt, it's great to see you again. Hello, Jane. And I think that stuff really, really matters. The human to human skills are going to become more rare, those moments in the future, because we're going to be charmed by automation and digital, and rare equals premium. And I reckon that premium also means that people are going to be prepared to pay more if it's a human to human experience.
Yep.
But you better be bloody good at it.
Yep. Which is like do the reps.
Do the reps.
Do the reps. You mentioned that earlier.
Do the reps. My key contact for this particular conference, I had a stand-up meeting with her this morning, and I'm not hiding the fact that I am studying the rest of the executives' faces and names. We had a conversation about it this morning because I want her to know that this stuff doesn't come naturally for some people. It doesn't for most of us, but in this one-day world, if that matters to you, do the reps. And so we had a bit of a laugh about it. And again, like, I think it's good to show people I'm doing the work while no one's watching here, not to get a gold star, but to show you that I'm walking my talk and that this stuff matters. It matters enough for me to dedicate time. So, and now I'm on the hook. And I actually like that game too, Em. I actually like holding myself accountable by telling people, here's what I'm going to do, like writing a book. I've told my team and my loved ones that I'm writing another one this year. Now I'm on the hook. So get cracking, Jack. Get writing. You told everyone you're
Get
writing.
cracking.
It's a game that I play with myself, which comes back to that self-discipline and commitment. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And just another presentation I did last year, I was sort of MC and to kick off the conference. So I gave them a little framework to be net curious rather than network. If we look at it like you're curious, it's name, same, fame, aim of the game, which was a nice little way for help people remember those. There are tools, there are techniques, and then it's just put in the work, hey, do the reps.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you for sharing that. You've got some great habits in there, and as you know, I read all of your stuff. So please follow Jax. She's got such great free content out there, and some wonderful workshops, etc. The future of service is 5D. What? Tell me more.
So the subline of that book is why humans serve best in the digital era. And so the 5D stands for 5 dimensions, inspired by brilliant psychologists, spiritual gurus, neuroscientists, philosophers. I basically pulled apart what makes us human and realized actually what everyone talks about, no matter what their lens is, we're multifaceted and there's multiple dimensions to us. And so the 5 dimensions is the physical dimension, the cognitive dimension, the emotional dimension, the social dimension, and the spiritual dimension. And so what the book basically plays back to the reader is that we need to first be aware that we're multifaceted. So through a leadership lens, how do you lead, speak, communicate, run a business looking at all the dimensions? But then what are the tools you need to sort of nurture them, which has been a bit of a theme of this chat, and strengthen them. Yeah. And so the book is half a why and then half a how, and it really unpacks why this is going to become critically important for the future in a digital world. Again, if we go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I actually really believe, Emma, there is a hierarchy in taking care of people.
Yep.
Whether you're coaching someone or whether it's a 1-minute interaction, your barista with a customer, whether it's your team member, there are some fundamental things that need to take place for people to feel, can I trust you? Am I safe? Do I believe you? Are you going to make me, feel good about myself? Are you going to help me grow, develop? Whatever the things are, there's a hierarchy in how we do that. And so the book basically unpacks that hierarchy and gives people some skills for leaders on how to nurture those 5 dimensions to get the best out of people.
So what's the next one going to, where are you going next? Is that?
Well, that's a good question. The problem I have is I've got too many ideas. So one of my practices is I go away every 90 days for solitude time, and the solitude, come back to wisdom and intuition. The time on my own, I put some really strong boundaries around making sure that basically no one can contact me, and I take myself to a place that's incredibly inspiring and nature filled, and that's where I usually make these types of decisions. So I'm doing that this week. I'm going up to a beautiful place in Red Hill, surrounded by stunning nature, and I've got 3 concepts, and the goal is to decide which 2 I'm going to kill off or park and which one am I going to double down on and write the book.
Nice. Well, we're looking forward to it, and it's I've probably I've gone a little bit over time today just because I enjoy everything you're about. So we finished with a bit of a rapid fire. Or a rapid rally, as I like to say, not rapid fire, rapid rally. So it's just to complete the sentence. So for you, I chose service is
leaving people better than you found them.
Leadership is
creating the conditions for people to thrive.
And one word for the future of work.
Adaptability.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, thank you for your commitment here today on the Coaching Podcast, holding up a clean mirror
Yeah.
for us all to remember, where are we paying attention and how can we create space, because we are meaning-making humans that need connection, and rare is premium. So many great little nuggets, which I knew this would be for all of our listeners. Everything Jack said isn't just for managers and leaders. It's for human beings, and service is the way of the future. So, thank you so much for being on the Coaching Podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All the best, Emma. Thank you.
just wonderful stuff. And thanks everyone for listening.
The Coaching Podcast is sponsored by Transition Coach for Athletes, a global coaching, mentoring, and US college sporting scholarship placement service. The service helps athletes navigate the often challenging world of choosing your best college fit while maximizing sports performance. Visit www.transitioncoachforathletes.com.